Hey, thank you so much for joining me. I'm meteorologist Kayla Smith. We have a lot to talk about in the weather, kind of today. We had a pretty busy weekend last weekend. On Saturday, had some hail reports across the area. Otherwise, the weather doesn't have too many things happening, so we're going to kind of jump right into that forecast. Make sure, though, that you are letting us know where you are watching from today. And then if at any point you have any weather questions while we're going through this forecast, please make sure that you let us know in the comments. We can pop those up here. I'll be watching for that, and we'll let you guys know what we're talking about. Just look at those weather headlines. We had a hailstorm this weekend that slammed near Portland, Texas. Areas had isolated 3-inch hailstones, so quite a bit of damage was reported down there, especially seeing a lot of videos, and I'll show you those here in a few minutes. We had some cars that had some damage that knocked windshields out, completely damaged the front of them, so it was, again, a very large hailstones that were falling. Another atmospheric river is expected to slam the Pacific Northwest as we go a little bit further on to the middle of this week and heading towards the weekend. So they are gearing up for more heavy rainfall across the area. And we do have some fire weather that we'll talk about just because for a lot of us, especially more in the central U.S., things are really starting to dry out and it's really starting to warm up yet again, which could increase the risk for fires. But let's look back at your weekend storm reports. This was Saturday again, on October 31st, so kind of going into Saturday. And you can start to see as we jump down to Texas where we were seeing some storms. Around 3:30 on Saturday, showers started near Austin, but then these moved down towards the southeast. By about 6 o'clock, we already had some hailstones reported closer to about San Antonio. But you can also see Corpus Christi. At this point, we had 3 severe thunderstorm warned storms, and we also had another severe thunderstorm warned storm south of Houston. Again, that was right around 6:30 on Saturday. And then these continue to push out off of land into parts of the ocean, but you can still see quite a bit of hail that was reported, and even a few really strong wind gusts from this storm. After about midnight, all of this was really clearing out of the area, but you can still see, again, we had quite a few reports from that. And then as you jumped into Sunday, we had a few reports too. Closer to Kentucky, this was relatively small hail, especially compared to what they were dealing with down in Texas, but we still did have both of those areas that had reports for this weekend. So showing you some of these reports from South Texas. This was hail near Mustang Island. You can see completely shattered the back of this windshield on this car, and then look at all of the dents. This was large hailstones that were falling. You can see even the side of the car here too, all of that damage. Parked under a gas station now, but clearly when that hail was falling, not somewhere that they were able to escape that hail. And then another picture that we had that I thought was really intense, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Look at how the hail just absolutely ripped the side here of this building. It looks like maybe that was a Walmart, a Lowe's of some sort, where they have kind of that more paper-like material when you're in those garden areas. I'm thinking at least that's what that looks like. But you can see it absolutely just ripped that to shreds. So that was very large hail again that they were dealing with down in South Texas. So for us here at HailTrace, that was a 3-star hail event. You can see where it was near Corpus Christi, all the way down closer to Brownsville too. This was the area near, again, Portland, Texas, Port Aransas, Mustang Island, that we had those largest hailstones reported. Of this event, we had maximum hail size of 3-inch hailstone. Now that was pretty isolated. Not all of the hail that was falling was up to that 3-inch mark. And then homes impacted were just under about 10,000. So it really was a lot of people having to deal with this large hail on Saturday. But you can see this was the second area too. This is going to be more to the west of Corpus Christi. This was a really long track storm too. I mean, you can see just how long this was dropping. Pretty decent size hail too. This was probably close to about 1.5 to 2-inch size hailstones in this storm. But even then, that does plenty of damage when you have it for that long of a time. Before we jump away, do we have any questions? I don't think I see any in the chat so far. Perfect. We'll look at current conditions across the U.S. right now. You can see we have a little bit of a stalled front across a lot of the continental U.S. and then areas up to the north, especially Portland. You're about to see more rainfall moving in. We have another atmospheric river that's getting ready to kind of set in place, and that's going to bring more heavy rainfall for the Pacific Northwest. And then there's currently some showers up to the northeast, Toronto, New York, Washington, D.C., along really the east coast. That's where we're seeing some showers. So we'll jump over here first Boston, you might be dry right now, but some showers coming up may bring you some rain this afternoon. Toronto, Ottawa, some parts of Kansas, moving into parts of New York State. You can also see that Connecticut, and then some showers off towards really the coast of North Carolina. So that's what's impacting the East Coast right now. Not a ton of rainfall really in Florida. It's actually looks like a pretty nice day for Florida. Central U.S., again, really not dealing with any rain if you get outside right now. Temperatures are pretty decent for a lot of us. It's sitting in the 70s, so lots of sunshine too to talk about for today. It may be a day that you consider having lunch on a patio. And then you can look back towards the northwest. Again, Portland, Seattle, seeing some of that rainfall already starting to move in, and you're also seeing some snow falling up in those higher elevations. That's going to continue as we talk about that atmospheric river a little bit later this week. So here's a look at those current temperatures sitting in the 70s, 71 currently here in Oklahoma City, 74 in Dallas. A little bit colder to the north. Billings, Montana, you're only at 44 right now. Boise, Idaho sitting at 48. And then off more towards the east, Charleston, you're sitting at 49. And Portland, you're sitting right around 50. Now talking about hail, really not worried about any hail. We don't have any significant hail at least expected over the next several days. Here's that significant hail model, and usually when we're talking about the chance to see some larger hail, we start to get more into these yellows and even reds and purples if we're really talking about big hail expected. As I play this forward, you can see a few spots that you might get a little bit of gray. That's really small hail. We're talking about pocket change size hail with that. Not expecting any significant hail over the next several days. This goes through Wednesday, and at that point, again, you're really not expecting anything. So, as we said, no significant hail for today on your Monday. That doesn't mean you couldn't have a few storms that could bring some maybe thunder, lightning this afternoon, and smaller size hail. We're talking about the largest hailstones today, if any storms were to see some hail, would be about quarter size, so right around 1 inch. We like to call this a pocket change hail day. You're really going to see most of that hails, if there was any, to be between about penny and nickel size. Again, if you were to see a larger hailstone, it's only going to be right around 1 inch quarter size, and usually that's not going to do any damage. Future radar, I want to talk more about this atmospheric river and just who's going to start to see some of this rainfall for this week. So we're going to jump first to the Pacific Northwest after we play this for a second, where you can see a lot of this rainfall as this atmospheric river starts to get a little bit closer will start impacting areas like the northern parts of California, Washington, Oregon. More rain is expected for you this week that could also cause more high surf across the west coast. And then there's also going to be later on this week areas to the east that are going to see a little bit more rainfall. But here's today, already seeing some of that rain, and in some of those higher elevations, again, closer to Seattle, Portland, you're seeing some snow as this continues to move across the area. That's going to continue up into parts of Canada too, Vancouver, Calgary, maybe seeing some of that snowfall. Not seeing the snow reaching Billings, Montana, but you could see some rain by tomorrow in Billings. And then the atmospheric river starts to get a little bit closer really by about midweek, so Wednesday or Thursday. Here's a different model I want to show you too, again, where you're seeing some of that rainfall that's going to be going over the next few days, and with some of that snowfall mixing in, especially when you get to about this evening. This model showing a little bit heavier rainfall, some of these areas shaded in yellow and even some orange. That's just going to indicate to us that the rain could be a little bit heavier, which means also in those areas the snowfall could be a little bit heavier too. So playing that forward to this evening, going into your Tuesday, Idaho at this point, you're seeing more of that rainfall. Montana as well, you're still seeing more of that rainfall. And then you get a little bit later on in the week, and that's when it's going to start to impact really the rest of today, at least some rain across the East Coast, New York, Toronto, Boston, so a lot of Maine. You might see some rainfall from this afternoon into this evening especially, and then more rain likely as we go more towards the rest of this week. It's going to be really more the second half of the week for at least the East Coast once the atmospheric river starts to impact the West Coast. Severe weather outlook today, nothing. We're not talking about even a category 1, which we like to call it a marginal risk. Not even seeing a marginal risk across the area for today. Tomorrow, not really expecting any thunderstorms for your Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to watch as that atmospheric river gets a little bit closer. Areas along the west coast from California into parts of Washington and Oregon. But again, at this point in time, the severe weather threat is below that marginal risk. So not really expecting any crazy weather Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. You kind of get a pattern that we're in right now. Weather, I don't like to say the quiet word, but it's pretty quiet right now as we go kind of further into November. Not talking about as much rain, as many storms really across the U.S., at least for this week. Looking at your flood outlook though, you can see for today, not expecting anything across the U.S. Again, it's a pretty quiet day, at least flooding wise for a lot of us. Tomorrow, as that atmospheric river does start to get a little bit closer, that's when we talk about a little bit more rainfall across the west coast. So northern parts of California as well as the parts of Oregon. You can see for Tuesday, even then it's still only that level 1 risk. So isolated flash flooding is possible. Overall, not overly concerned with that flooding risk until we get a little bit later. Then by Wednesday, you can still see another area that's highlighted that you're talking about the chance for rainfall is going to be northern parts of California and then up into parts of, you can really see Washington too, that we're dealing with that. And then really all along the west coast, you're dealing with this all the way down, even back into California. That's your Thursday risk, and that's really when the rainfall starts to get heavier, is Wednesday night into Thursday, and then even into Friday as well when we're talking about that atmospheric river. That's just bringing a ton of moisture. We kind of talked about an atmospheric river a few weeks ago. If you missed that, you can go back and watch it on our YouTube. But basically what that means is it's just a lot of water that's being forced off the ocean onto land. It goes up some of those mountains, it kind of forces that rainfall out, and that's why we talk about heavy rainfall and snow when we deal with atmospheric rivers. So as you look at your 5-day rain chances, it's really coast to coast that we're dealing with this rain. East Coast has a chance to see some heavy downpours this week, but especially the West Coast, where that atmospheric river is expected to kind of impact us later on this week. That's when the rainfall numbers start to go up. So as you look at this day by day, Pacific Northwest gets a few showers for today. By tomorrow, coastal storms pretty much dry in the middle. Wednesday, the East Coast starts to see just a few more showers. So you can see New York, Boston, you may be seeing a little bit more rainfall by Wednesday, but hey, there's Thursday. We highlighted Thursday as more of a yellow day, so kind of getting your attention. That's when the atmospheric river really will start to bring downpours. So you can see again, areas from Seattle, Portland, all the way down into California. That's really when we're going to watch and have more of a concern for that flooding risk will be on Thursday. And then by Friday, a lot of that rain starts to shift more off towards the east. Future rainfall totals, before we jump into that really fast, making sure we don't have any questions. Things still looking nice and good. And remember, if you guys want to let us know where you're watching from, we always love to hear where you guys are tuning in for today. I see we have a few viewers on still right now. Future rainfall totals, focusing in on the Northwest. You can see by about Wednesday evening, some areas are already talking about 3 to 4 inches of rainfall. And then you get into Thursday, you can see off the coast, talking about maybe 5 to 6 inches. And this is a model that I pulled that's a little bit more limited. It's not bringing in as much rainfall as some other models could. So we talk about these computer models, what they're thinking. This one, again, is a little bit more on the lower side. So that means we could even see more rainfall than this as we head towards the rest of this week. Fire weather outlook, we talked how a lot of us in the central U.S. are going to stay pretty dry. So that's going to elevate the fire danger tomorrow. Not really worried about anything for today, but you can see tomorrow parts in Nebraska, Wyoming, you can see far south parts of South Dakota could be seeing some of this elevated fire risk, not in that critical or in that extreme category, but still something that'll be worthwhile watching tomorrow. And then really when we go today's 3 through 8, nothing super impactful stands out just yet. But as we see our weather pattern continuing to kind of favor being drier and warmer than average, I think that fire concern will become to get a little bit more like something that we have to watch. Tropical cyclone formation, taking you off land for just a second. Nothing is expected to form in the next 7 days. The Atlantic is staying pretty quiet right now, which is good news. After last week on this day, on Monday, we were talking about major Hurricane Melissa making landfall in Jamaica. So it's been a very impactful week. Melissa hit Jamaica and then Cuba and then the Bahamas and then went by Bermuda. It was a very busy week for the tropics. So it's kind of nice to see that we have a little break, if you will. If we were to get another storm to form, next storm up would be Nestor. But again, not expecting anything in the next 7 days. So you can see so far for the 2025 hurricane season, the names that we've already used, we got down that first list, got up to Lorenzo, got Melissa, Nestor again would be that next storm. If we were to have something form, we've had 13 storms so far for this year, but there's still time left in the tropical season. You can see it really peaked about mid-September, stays pretty active in October, so it's not unheard of for us to have, again, a hurricane in late October like we just had with Melissa. Hurricane season officially comes to an end on November 30th, so we still have some time that you could see some of that activity, but there really does start to be a drop-off by about the middle of November, so expecting if we were to see any of that activity, it would start to wrap up here within the next about week week and a half. But you can see where we are today, just after November 1st. So again, we still have a little bit time left in our season. I wanted to show you that 2025 hurricane forecast that we had here at HailTrace. Named storms, usually on average for hurricanes, is around 14. Or named storms is 14, hurricanes is 7, and then major hurricanes is usually right around 3. Last year in 2024, we had 18 total storms, 11 which were hurricanes, and then 5 were major. This year, our forecast here at HailTrace, again, was to be slightly above average. We were guessing between about 12 to 17 storms. So far, like I mentioned, we've had 13, so we officially hit that forecast. Hurricanes, we were expecting to be about between 6 and 10, and then major, we were saying 2 to 3. We've actually had 4 major hurricanes this year, 3 which were Category 5 and 1 which was a Category 4 hurricane. None of those made landfall except for Hurricane Melissa. A lot of those were just what we like to call fish storms. Compared to last year, though, I just again want to remind people, you can still have some activity in November. Last year we had Patty, Raphael, and Sarah. That was all in November, and Raphael was actually a Category 3 hurricane, not just a tropical storm. So again, you still can have activity going into November. Now coming back to land, let's talk about how things are getting a little bit warmer. Here's a look at your Monday. A lot of us, you can start to see more of these reds. That's more above average temperatures compared to normal. But for areas kind of more mid-south, Tennessee, Mississippi, Atlanta, Georgia, things may be a little bit cooler for today. By tomorrow, a lot of us seeing this big red blob. Yep, that's that warm up moving back in. It's going to continue for your Wednesday, Thursday as well. Take a look at that. Very few of us are seeing cooler temperatures, but to the northeast, you will be seeing some cooler than average temperatures by Thursday. And then once we get to Friday, a lot of that warmer air still moving across the area. So really for this week, that's why a lot of the weather is going to be a little bit more tame, if you will, because high pressure kind of moves back in, things start to dry out, and that's giving us some of these warmer than average temperatures. Temperature future, you can see by 6 o'clock this evening, you're sitting right around 64 in Oklahoma City, more 40s to the north, 68 in California. And then you go to tomorrow morning, starting off in the 50s in central Oklahoma, Texas. You can see some 30s to the north. Detroit, you're starting at 39 tomorrow morning, 35 in Minneapolis. Tuesday afternoon, things start to warm back up. You're in the 60s and the 70s. Cooling off again Wednesday morning, but by Wednesday afternoon, 70s and 60s. So it's not going to be overly warm, even though it's above average. Once we start to talk about these temperatures being in those 60s, and if you're 10 degrees above average, you're in the 70s. So technically, yes, you're warmer than average, but 70s and sunshine this time of year, pretty nice if you ask me. By Thursday, you're sitting in the 40s and 50s in the morning, and you can continue to see that warm up as you head more towards the afternoon, especially as you head towards the weekend. So as we look at this extended temperature outlook, this is November 8th through the 12th. So getting into that second week of November, still a lot of us dealing with these well above average temperatures, especially the more you go off towards the west, parts of New Mexico, Arizona, really the Four Corners region. You're talking about quite a bit of temperatures being above average. And also in that area, you can see western Oklahoma, the Texas Panhandle, parts of New Mexico again. That's where we're expecting things to be drier than average, which is why I already mentioned earlier on in this kind of forecast that we were concerned a little bit more as we got further into this week and especially next week with areas that are still staying drier than average, warmer than average. That's why that fire concern will start to become more of a threat, especially, the winter season. As we get closer to winter officially starting, that'll be on December 21st, the winter solstice. As we get a little bit closer to that, we do start to see that wildfire risk increasing a little bit more, so we'll have to keep a close eye on that. And that is your forecast. If you obviously are following us, we thank you for that. But if you don't want to miss out on any of our fun content either, you can follow us on some of our social media platforms. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. We have some of our friends on TikTok watching right now. So if you want to see that daily forecast every day, that's obviously the first thing to do is follow us so that you can get that notification when we're going live. And then like that hail map that we showed you, we had that 3-star hail event again on Saturday in parts of Texas. If you want access to maps like that, you can give us a call. You can go to 855-334-4245 and get you connected on how to get a subscription with us to go ahead and get that hail map. Or you can email us at info@hailtrace.com or go to www.hailtrace.com. And it's also, as this weather is a little bit quieter right now, nice time for roofers and areas to kind of get out there and rework some areas that maybe there were storms earlier on this year. Now that the weather's a little bit nicer, you can actually be able to get up on some of those roofs. Hey, thank you again so much for joining us today. We will be back here tomorrow, same time, same place, for your Tuesday forecast.